I have an attendee, let's see, CX1566. You could identify yourself, that would help.
Good morning, it's Rhonda Sullivan with the 911 program.
Hi, Rhonda, and are you here representing the CIO?
I don't know if Quinn is on yet. I thought I'd jump on just in case he got busy. He had a couple things going this morning.
It's to me like we have a quorum, and so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I know Mike Bosleman said he'd be joining us at 10. Let's go ahead and start with introductions, and I will call on people so we don't talk over one another. I'm Jenny Stapp. I'm the state librarian and very happy to chair the Land Information Advisory Council, and thanks for being with us. Erin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Fashaway, and I am the state GIS coordinator, and I staff the council.
Genevieve?
I'm Genevieve Lighthizer, and I'm admin assistant for the State Library.
Rob All.
Yeah, hi, Robert All, work for the U.S. Forest Service in the regional, for the Washington office, and I represent the Montana GIS professionals.
Alan.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Alan Armstrong here with the Bureau of Land Management in Billings, Montana, GIS program manager for Montana and Dakotas. I represent the Department of the Interior.
Thanks, Alan. Brian Collins.
Good morning, everyone. Brian Collins, GIS manager for Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, here today on behalf of our director, Amanda Castor.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Eric Spangenberg.
Good morning, everyone. Eric Spangenberg. I'm with Lewis and Clark County, City of Helena GIS, and I serve on MLAC as a local government representative.
Lee.
Hi, everyone. Lee Mackholtz. I am the GIS manager for the City of Missoula and serve as a local government representative.
Alex.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Alex Dado. I'm the state soil scientist for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and I represent our seat on the council.
And Dan Staley.
Hello, everyone. This is Dan Staley. I work for Staley Engineering Associates. I'm our technical lead for our survey and GIS department, and I sit on the council representing the Montana Association of Registered Land Surveyors.
Valentine.
Good morning. I'm Valentine Hoff. I work at the Fire Center at the University of Montana, and I represent the Montana University System.
Katie Shank. Did we lose Katie? Let's
Katie,
see.
I was just going to say, Katie is with the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. We've been working with her on some grant related items, but it looks like she might have gotten dropped. Hopefully she'll jump back on.
Yeah. Michelle Gianni.
Hi, Jenny. I'm Michelle Giorgiani, and I'm a project manager with Applied Geographics, also known as AppGeo, and we are working with Erin and Jenny and Lee and the team on the strategic planning project that we'll talk more about later.
And Eric Ingbar.
Good morning. I'm Eric Ingbar. I'm a consultant working with your team on the Applied Geographics contract.
And Michael Fashway.
Michael Fashway, Montana State Library GIS analyst and land information lead.
Chris Larson.
Hi, Chris Larson. I'm a guest today. I have been at DPHHS for about a year and wanted to talk to you all about health. So we'll chat later.
Thanks, Chris. Let's see. Warren Rowe. Warren, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. I'm Warren Rowe. I'm the new GIS supervisor for Gallatin County.
Glad you could be with us.
Thanks.
And Rhonda Sullivan.
Good morning, I'm Rhonda Sullivan. I work with the 911 program, and I don't know if Quinn's going to get on or not, but I'll sit in as a guest just in case.
Great, glad to have you with us. Did I miss anyone?
I'm here, Frank Dewar with GIS Program Manager for the City of Bozeman.
Thanks, Frank. My apologies for missing you.
That's okay.
And Jessica Mitchell here to Spatial Analysis Lab, and we've been working with statewide land cover mapping with the library.
Great. Is there anyone else joined us? Okay. Wanted to make just an announcement and update about the council appointment process. This is the last meeting of this official council, and we have 2 new appointments from the legislature. Senator Bruce Gillespie is going to be representing the Montana Senate, and Representative Kathy Whitman will be representing the House of Representatives. And it doesn't look like either of them were able to join us today, but we look forward to having them involved in future council meetings. And then, as you all know, like we talked about at the last meeting, your positions are all up for reappointment effective for this next biennium. So I really hope all of you are considering reapplying for appointment to those positions. We had a meeting last month with Leanne Taylor, who was the previous governor's boards and appointments advisor, and she's aware of the transition of this council. She is transferring to a different position, and the governor will be appointing a new boards and appointments advisor. And so we're waiting to have more contact with that office as soon as that person is available. But in the meantime, the link is available for you to apply for those positions. We, as I said, really encourage you to do so and hope that we have the opportunity to work with you again in the coming biennium. Any questions about that process? There's a link from your council page. It says serve with us, that takes you to the appointment process information. The next item on the agenda is approval of the executive summary from our May 12th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the summary?
Those didn't get posted, so we're going to leave that till the next meeting. Sorry about that.
Thanks for the heads up, Genevieve. So moving on to standing reports.
I think it's the grant review subcommittee.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just give a basic update of where we're at with the grant process. So We did one special extension that was approved at the last council meeting, and we are working on extending the one grant for fiscal year 2020. We are working on closing out the rest of the FY 2020 grants, and then extending and closing out FY 2021 grants, and initiating the FY 2022 and writing those statements of work and meeting with the individual grant recipients. It's a very busy time of year, so we are working hard with our team to get those documents out so that the grant work can continue. So nothing major to report other than we're working on all that, on initiating the new grants and extending FY 20 and 21 grants. Are there any questions? Oh, I should mention, my apologies. The subcommittee will meet again this June to help advise the State Library on the special off-cycle grant that we will be publishing. And it looks as though we will use the month of July to publish those grant materials for the purposes of collecting new survey control. Pretty excited about it. Internally, we've met with several local governments who are interested in fulfilling one of those grant applications, and in areas where we have prioritized a need for PLSS data collection. So we're pretty excited about that, and we believe that it'll be another successful grant program. Any questions?
Okay. Erin, did you want to talk about the land plan subcommittee?
Yeah, so basically through the process of the strategic planning process and the work that we've done, we hope to maybe convene one subcommittee meeting over the summer. And so I wanted to take any volunteers for the Land Information Plan Subcommittee. This past year, we did things a little differently with the working group. With the working session, excuse me, we'll continue to do a working session with the entire council, but wanted to meet to just flush out some things with the subcommittee itself. So who's interested? And the last chair was, I do believe, was Catherine Maynard. You don't have to step up to be chair, but if you could help participate in the subcommittee, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Erin, this is Alan. I'd love to volunteer, not as the chair, because I feel woefully inadequate in speaking about the land information plan. I'm sorry to admit, but I think this would definitely help me really fully understand it better. So I'm kind of self-centered here and wanting to participate so that I really can feel like I can speak on behalf of it better. And I'd like to take that opportunity to do so.
Thank you. I think this is really this will be a special time to be a part of this subcommittee, because I think we'll see a lot of changes once we have a strategic plan in place, and we can focus on more operational things in a land plan.
Yeah, Erin, I'd be willing to be a member of the subcommittee, but I don't think I'm in a position to take a leadership position on it, but I'm certainly willing to contribute.
Thank you, Frank.
Aaron, I'll roll forward and participate on that, especially given my role with helping with the strategic plan as well. I think that would be a good way to bring those two together.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. I agree. Okay, well, I'll send another announcement out asking for volunteers. And so if you need more time to think about it, please take the time and we'll give you more information and when we'll meet this summer.
Thanks, Aaron. Is Michael with us? Megan?
I think I don't see, not seeing Jeff either. Genevieve, did Jeff send a replacement or Michael?
I didn't hear an official answer on that.
He might be a little late. So if we could we possibly do the report later if he jumps on?
Sure, of course.
Okay.
You want to talk about the GIS coordinators report?
Yes. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome, thank you. All right, I've got some pretty good updates to keep everybody up to date on regarding some of the activities of GIS at the State Library and some of our coordination activities with other agencies and then on the national level as well. So just a quick update on Montana RTN. So as I think as announced at the previous council meeting, the Montana legislature identified funding for the startup of a Montana RTN, so real-time network, and we are currently in the process of working on developing a coordinator position for management and coordination of the Montana RTN. So we're looking to hire someone within the next couple months, if not sooner. We have been coordinating with the Washington folks, with WRSN, WSRN and MDT for the transfer of the Montana, I think we were calling them pods, off of the Washington State Reference Network and onto a Montana network. We are currently under a timeline. The state of Washington had graciously extended their pilot project to the state of Montana. We've been on their network for, I think, almost 2.5 years now, and they've extended it to fall of this year. And so we're looking to transfer off of their network sometime before the end of this calendar year. And we will be coordinating with, continue to coordinate with the Washington folks, the Department of Transportation, Marls, on what that will look like, and communication will be going out to those user groups and the people who are currently on the network to give as much information as we have. So this is, this is a new, this is an effort that's been slowly gaining momentum, and really want to thank Wally Gladstone. He has really pushed for this, these efforts to be made, along with folks from Marls, of developing and creating a real-time network for the state of Montana and the folks at MDT. And so we're finally in the stages of creating that network, and as soon as we have a plan in place and more information to give the communities, we will be publishing that to MAGIP, to Marls, and other communities that would be impacted or would be able to use this this network. So it's a very exciting advancement in technology for the state of Montana. I can answer questions as I go, or you guys can hold your questions at the end. So if you have a question, feel free to just put your hand up or go ahead and interrupt me. So we've recently completed, for cadastral, we've recently completed our county adjustments. So this is basically based on improvements to the PLSS through our grant program and other types of collection that is done throughout the state. So as a reminder, we're constantly looking for additional survey controls. So if your agency or entity would like to share the control with us for the purposes of improving cadastral, please get in contact with myself, Jeff Hedstrom, or Michael Fashaway at the State Library, and we can see if the control would help improve the CAD and SDI and therefore improve parcels. Another exciting thing that I was recently invited to be a part of the FGDC cadastral subcommittee. And I do know Rob All is also on that subcommittee as well. And so one of the things they've been speaking about recently is a proposed national parcel service. So pretty interesting what has been accomplished thus far. I think that it's really great to see or to hear Montana be called the gold standard or the platinum standard when measured against the rest of the other states. And so however we can help and give advisement, we will do so. And I don't know, Rob, if you wanted to say anything else regarding the FGDC cadastral subcommittee. Okay. Any questions about cadastral?
Rob's muted. I haven't heard anything he said.
I know. I've been excitedly talking, but Erin, I'm glad you mentioned it. I wanted to chime in and say that as well. In the presentation that we saw, there were several maps that, you know, where Montana really stood out in the ease of access and the quality of our data compared to the entire country. Even states that you would think would be more advanced, we really stood out, and that made me proud. So thank you, Erin, for all the good work you guys are doing here.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think everyone on the council has the right to be proud of the cadastral because of, you know, the organization and just the accomplishment over the years. You know, what the folks set out to do back before 2005. There's not many people around that were a part of that original group, but we're basically standing on a really solid foundation. And with the improvements and the legislative updates, I think it'll really just strengthen the MSDI and the CAD NSDI even further. And again, we're really happy to be able to provide any kind of guidance or best practices at the national and maybe global level one day. But so yeah, they're looking to create this national parcel service. They actually had one in place, and it was just for testing purposes and for the subcommittee. And they're in another discussion item that they're having, which will be interesting to see how it flushes out, is as a national parcel ID. I really don't have anything else to report on that, but it's just something that they are exploring. Okay. So I have a few 911 updates to give, and Michael Fashaway is on the call, so he can jump in. But where we're at in the process for Next Gen 911 initiative is we are again working on establishing a profile for a new job for focusing on Next Gen 911 for a GIS analyst and a new hire. And again, we hope to have that person hired within the next few months, if not sooner. And we've also established a team for the purposes of writing and procuring writing the RFP and procuring the data assessment service. So this is the service that local governments and PSAPs will be able to basically test their data against to see if it conforms to standards. So we're pretty excited about that. The current team exists of, looking at my notes here, the way we've framed the team is basically two GIS folks and 2 911 folks. So we have a local GIS representative, Michael Fashaway as the state GIS representative, Rhonda Sullivan as the state 911 representative, and then a local county 911 representative. So we're pretty excited to move forward with the new hire and then also the procuring of that data service. Any questions there? Michael, did you want to add anything else?
No, I think you covered it.
Rhonda, wasn't sure if you'd like to add anything.
You said that you had already got somebody from the 911 local PSAP.
Yes.
Do you have a name?
Yeah, Kim Burdick, Choteau County.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
And then Tom Coley from Carbon County.
Oh, good. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, moving on. Any other questions? So geo-enabled elections update. We're basically continuing to work with NSGIC on the pilot project. I think it's phase 2, wave 2 is how they're designating it. And basically continuing to work on how we can establish the NSGIC best practices into our workflows, both at the state level and with the counties. And we are working on a partnership currently with the Montana Secretary of State's office. We've been working with them for over a year now, working to take the existing voting data and create precincts and precinct splits. So that's basically your lowest level of boundary for an election, and basically a precinct split represents a ballot. So it's your lowest level of geometry. And then also working to geocode and basically compare addresses against the current MSDI data and fill in the gaps where possible, whether it's the election process informing the data that we have or the data that we have informing the elections process. And so that's one of the workflows and best practices we hope to see put in place at the local government level, where the authoritative boundary set being in the next gen 911 data is informing the elections process. So an address will come into the county at the county level, and usually through the 911 addressing process, and then that data will then be given to the elections folks to integrate into their information. And vice versa, where we can create a process where if elections folks find an address that is not currently in their system, that they can send it over to the 911 folks and verify it in their records. Essentially, what we're trying to do is limit the number of address data sets held at the local government level and at the state level. And we continue to use the MLA grant program for geo-enabling elections, and we have one county, an additional county this year. I think we'll be extending Sanders County. Blaine is wrapping up their process, and then Hill County is starting the fiscal year 2022 to explore how to implement the best practices of collecting data for elections and maintaining data for elections. Any questions?
I note that Michelle has asked about getting a copy of the slides, and we'll make sure that the slides are posted as part of the meeting materials, and then we can send them out as well.
Absolutely. Michael, anything else to add there regarding boundaries or addresses for elections?
I don't think so.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, elevation updates. So this is pretty exciting. So I reported this at the last, I do believe the May meeting, that the proposal for 3DEP was accepted as revised. And for this, you're about to see a lot of messy maps. Maybe not messy, but there's a lot of action going on in these maps. So basically, we had submitted a proposal for collection, and basically we did not have enough match under the 3DEP program, and the based on a 40% cost share, and so they could not award or fund it based on the 3DEP program, and so this was our revised proposal that was accepted by the 3DEP program. So those very bright green areas. So since then, so this one might be a little difficult to see. You can see Montana in the top part of your screen, and I hope you can tell that there's more bright green areas. So basically, we had we have confirmed this with the USGS, and that the original proposal, so basically what we had originally asked for, those areas are now being funded and prioritized for the next year, or for this current year, all except for the Yellowstone County. So basically, the USGS has come in with direct federal partners to collect the rest of our original proposals, except Yellowstone. This is not considered 3DEP partnership, but it still is being collected. So this is a pretty fantastic advancement for LIDAR for Montana. So Troy Blanford is in the process of conducting a gap analysis this week, and he'll have a little more information available, and we'll be sending that out to his working group. And then in addition, so you could see that these areas, so Toole, Liberty, parts of Blaine, Daniels, Sheridan, and part of Roosevelt, they will all be collected now. So you can see the original revised proposal, bright green. Now those other areas will be coded in bright green as well. It is, let me just pull up the 3DEP inventory, or excuse me, the Montana LIDAR inventory. So let me know, can everyone see that? It should be populating now.
Yep.
Okay, so those areas are okay, it's kind of drawing slowly on my end. So I will drop the link in the chat, but these areas are now being prioritized and will be prioritized for collection. And so I've dropped the inventory into the chat. So if you can see, it's basically the whole northern half, northern quarter of the state is going to be, we're going to have a full collection. And so it's very exciting. And based on Troy's estimate, it looks as though we possibly are within striking distance of completion by perhaps 2023-24, which is really exciting for when we first kind of thought about the program. I think we initially calculated that the total cost for flying Montana was going to be like $80 million, and we kind of scoffed at the idea of even going after it. But with the help of our federal partners and state partners and local government and tribal partners, we've been able to get this far and possibly be done in the next few years. And additionally, we've separate from everything I've just mentioned, FEMA has reached out to us for additional priority areas. So hopefully we might see at the next council meeting, or perhaps an update in between then, even more areas shaded on the map. On this map. So anything that does come in as a priority area and things that do change, we're constantly updating this story map. So this is your one-stop shopping for your LiDAR update on acquisitions. So we highly recommend that you monitor the Montana LiDAR inventory. Troy, I saw that you joined. Did you have any other comments on this?
Covered it, Aaron. I would just stress the importance of trying to get areas of interest to me within the next month or so. We're going to be doing our planning through the Elevation Working Group for collections next year. So we'd be putting in the 3DEP program again in October. So we're beginning that planning basically right now and on into July. So as folks have areas where they're interested in LiDAR, let me know. Make sure we can try to see if we can get them.
Yep.
Hey,
So
I just wanted to say that that's all of this is really exciting development, Aaron. When we first started the Elevation Working Group, that seemed like a long ways off to get full coverage.
It did.
Also, I just wanted to say I recently last week I submitted a proposal for a QL1 buy-up for about 30,000 acres in parts of Missoula and Flathead counties. So some around Hungry Horse and some a little bit north of Seeley Lake. So anyway, just wanted to let you know about that.
That's good to know.
Rob, so I have those areas and I'll be adding them to this map. I'm waiting for a little bit more confirmation to make sure it's going to happen, from on the USGS's side. And then I'll also mention that CSKT is looking to do the same thing. They submitted some QL1 buy-up for several irrigation canals within the reservation. So in addition to what you're seeing right now in yellow, there's within that yellow area, you're going to see some of that will be a buy-up to higher level LiDAR at quality level 1. So
yeah.
And are you guys working with the Missoula County, Lake County, and Flathead County folks?
They've been on
No.
yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, no, just from my part, there were funds from the Rocky Mountain Research Station to cover the Coram experimental forest outside of Hungry Horse, and a couple of experimental treatment sites in the Swan Valley.
Okay.
And oh yeah, and then around Missoula, the Lolo National Forest is planning a wildfire adapted Missoula project, and they wanted to get some QL1 data in specific treatment zones.
Well, this is great. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So as a reminder, as a part of the 3DEP grant program, we will submit the proposal in October of this year, and then the collections will take place the following spring, summer, fall, depending upon when planes can get up in the air. Excuse me. And so we ask, like Troy said, we ask that you get those your areas of interest and collection areas into us as soon as you can. And if you can partner with us and have money to bring to the table, that makes your collection even more likely to get prioritized. Like I said, we'll be meeting. We'll be convening the working group sometime in the next couple months, and also invite you to join that working group as well. And that is my last slide for the GIS coordinators update. Is there any other questions or anything I've left off?
I just wanted to make mention of the American Rescue Plan Act funds and the process that the state is undergoing this summer to allocate some of those funds, especially for water and sewer projects. We had some conversations during the legislative session about using some of those funds for LiDAR acquisition. And those initial conversations received positive support from members of the legislature. The process is now changed to one in which the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation will be leading a commission to review priorities for those kinds of funding. I know that a lot of those funds are already planned for. However, we have been in conversation with groups like Montana Association of Conservation Districts about applying for ARPA funds also for LiDAR acquisition. The state library could apply. It might be more compelling for partners to apply for those funds through DNRC. And we're continuing to watch that process and can be available to help provide information to applicants, including information about leveraged funds, which is an important part of the application process. So if anybody has an eye to applying towards to ARPA funds for LiDAR, again, we're happy to coordinate with you on those requests as well.
And from what I've learned through NSGIC with some of the partners that are helping lobby for the collection or the completion of collection of LiDAR in the Western states to kind of make it easier on the states with small populations and large landmass, was that they were going to lower the match under 3DEP if you could use ARPA funds and you could show that ARPA funds were being utilized. I don't have documentation on that. That was what was announced at a recent NSGIC meeting, but I could look for documentation on that moving forward. Brian, did you want to talk about your hub story map or what you've been working on for the ARPA project distribution?
Yeah, of course. And I'll paste a link here to the initial resource we put together, which is just kind of a baseline at the moment. We're utilizing ArcGIS Hub, but more as just a quick and accessible platform to get some content online. I don't have a timeline or ETA specifically when we will have the actual resources available through our site for applicants to submit requests. We're working with a company here in Missoula, Submittable, to develop the interface that will be utilized for the application process. So more information, I guess, forthcoming on that note, and I'll paste the link here.
Thanks, Brian. Any other questions or comments pertaining to the GIS coordination report? I also want to welcome Brandy Holstein from the Department of Revenue. Thanks for joining us, Brandy. Has anybody else joined the meeting? Mike, it looks like you've been able to join us as well. Welcome. Okay, moving on to current business. Our next action item is adoption of the revised FY22 land plan that we looked at during your May 12th work session. Again, the revision to the FY22 land plan is necessary in order to account for the additional funding that was allocated to the state library through the passage of House Bill 49 and the increase in the Montana Land Information Act recordation fee. And so the proposed budget takes into account that new appropriation. The appropriation for the fiscal year totals approximately $1.76 million. The state library is still in the process of completing the final budget process that happens at the end of every legislative session so that we can account for the exact amount of appropriation, but that's approximately what it is. You can see in the draft budget, there's the $250,000 fully allocated for the grant funding. That includes the off-cycle PLSS grant that was approved at your April council meeting. And then under operations is a dedicated $50,000 for the MSDI partner training program. As a reminder, at your April council meeting, when we knew we had some balance remaining in the funding available for grant awards, the council at that time had determined that that remaining balance, $779,859, would be split between PLSS grants and the training program. In this proposed budget, that full amount is awarded to the PLSS grant program, and a full $50,000 suggested for the training program. In addition, we have the council budget at $10,000. We have the strategic plan implementation budget at $40,000. That's our contract with AppGeo. Fixed costs and operations represents costs including staff's travel and training budget, our software budget, and then costs with the State Information Technology Services Division to support our GIS operations. I guess I'm going from bottom to top. I wanted to make mention also of the estimated personal services budget. This reflects some of the hiring that Aaron has described in order to accomplish the work that's laid out in the land plan. A lot of this funding would be available to then fill some of the positions that we lost in the 2017 budget cuts, and to allow us to get back on track with some of the priorities that have largely been put on hold since 2017, including getting a revised and up-to-date transportation theme, and some of the other efforts that we've been talking about. Importantly, helping to support Erin in her GIS coordination work as well. The amount in the personal services budget reflects essentially the difference between having an adequate operations budget and then what would be available for us to then fill those positions. And then we have our agency indirect costs. Those costs fund positions like Genevieve's, John Kilgour's, who helps to coordinate the grant program, our accounting office, and other kinds of agency indirect costs. And then in addition to the information that's presented here, you'll remember that Jessica Mitchell at the April meeting did a presentation on the land cover statewide plan. And we asked her at that time to be prepared to come to this council meeting to talk about how we could appropriate funds to help support some of the priorities that were identified in the land cover plan. And Jessica's shared some information that I think Aaron is prepared to share with the council. I want to ask if there's any questions about the draft budget or any other changes in the land plan.
Jenny, I will add that I realized that the asterisks got dropped from fixed cost general operations, and I put it into the chat. So that should be at the bottom of the budget, and I will make that adjustment. So it's basically outlines what you had had discussed. So SITSD, licensing, travel, training, and outreach for fixed costs in general operations.
All right. Aaron, will you bring up those recommendations from Jessica?
Okay.
So what we suggested would be most beneficial for the council is to have Jessica prepare a list of deliverables related to the land cover plan and costs associated with providing those deliverables. In the draft budget, in the land plan that you're looking at, we've identified about $20,000 for the council to consider. There's obviously more than $20,000 in priorities here, and we wanted to have a discussion with the council about what, if any, of these priorities you think would be appropriate for the use of MLI funds to be accomplished during the FY22 land plan process. And Jessica, did you want to provide any additional detail about these items?
Sure, I'm happy to run through them. Some of the items that we have in here are fairly standard outreach pieces. They have ramped up since we've been moving toward from an interim draft to a final draft land cover. And so we have some additional cost for land cover working group meetings to go through the process of soliciting some ecological expertise to assess and validate the products, and then to move forward with a regular 5-year land cover plan. Right now we have a 2-year plan. And the training workshop, we tend to host 1 or more LiDAR land cover training workshops each year. And so we'd like to focus a little bit more on that component of our outreach. The third item here pertains to automating updates that we tend to do on an annual basis for agricultural and fire and transportation. That's an objective in our land cover plan. The other pieces are also recommendations in the land cover plan. And to me, these are sort of directions we'd like to continue to move forward with. One is we've been building a participatory GIS platform where we're able to first work with crews to complete survey forms on the ground. They may be out, for example, NRCS crews, BLM crews, our own crews, heritage program crews that can help us validate the product that we're delivering. And then the last piece is working closely with the heritage program to look across ecological systems and to see what conditions these systems are in, and particularly looking across time series. This is a platform we've been building out and would like to be able to wrap up this year. And so those are the items we have pulled out as deliverables here.
Thanks, Jessica. Any questions about any of these items? So I want to ask the council first about the land plan budget as proposed in general, and whether or not you think it seems sufficient and adequate, and then specifically about the land cover theme. Again, you can see there's currently a planned $20,000. There's about $50,000 of requests in the information that Jessica prepared. I'd also like to ask the council your opinions about the priorities that Jessica laid out to help develop the land cover theme.
I would like to say that I think there are several very nice aspects about Jessica's work, including the time series work and the automation of some updating routines. And I was also really glad to see a participatory component and a validation component. So it seems like a lot of the critical components of a successful theme are being addressed. So thank you for that good work.
Thanks, Rob.
Other feedback. Could we bring back Jessica's letter to the council? So one approach for the council would be to say, I think Rob had suggested appreciating the automating the annual land plan updates, the participatory GIS survey forms. Rob, you'd mentioned one other.
I was very pleased to see the automation of some annual updates so that we don't get into a situation where the theme is, 10 years out of date. So I think that's a really significant component. Looking at this list again, I see the training workshops, and there's great value in those. And I am sure that MAGIP would be pleased to coordinate, hosting those workshops as well.
Do we want to then suggest that within that $20,000 budget item in the land plan budget, that priority be given to the training and the annual land cover updates and the participatory GIS survey forms?
From my perspective, I was thinking that by working through MAGIP, the workshops might actually generate some revenue. So I would like to offer an opportunity to reduce the cost to the lab of producing the workshops, and potentially, if she would like to charge for them, there might be an opportunity to recover some costs.
That sounds good. Up until now, we have not charged anything. So the time here is time to produce material that's custom to Montana for the tutorials.
Definitely. And, I think, charging a nominal fee of $50 or something like that might help alleviate some of the expense.
Agreed.
Jessica, of the items you have proposed, do you have a recommendation of priority?
Yes. For me, the priority here is the land cover working group meetings have been essential, and I would like to see that they remain. This transition from an interim product to a final product, I really feel like we're about 6 months out and pretty close to achieving that. And so I would like to be able to complete that this upcoming fiscal year. So, the pieces that we've begun working on that we're testing right now the participatory GIS survey forms. If the council feels like that is an important component, I would agree with that as well. The system's rankings are quite outdated, and I think from a heritage program perspective that I'm communicating their priority right here. Our time series, we have a platform that's built. We have put together our Landsat NDVI tasseled cap from the 80s until current, and we've worked with the NRCS to partition that by watershed. So these are pieces that are close to completion. The LC map piece is becoming available right now. And much of that through, I think, 2016 has already been integrated. So that leaves us waiting for a few years. But that, piece, these are pieces with the time series we could wrap up in a downscaled fashion. What that would leave us, though, is if we're looking at trends over time, we really need to be thinking about looking at those signatures and connecting them to disturbances on the ground. And so I could see that as being a piece we could aim to achieve in out years. But it's also a piece I think I've been, hearing from end users that they're very interested in having for just looking at trends that especially will tie into climate.
Jenny, may I ask a clarification on one of the items?
Sure.
The online LiDAR land cover training workshop, could you just review that one more time? Is that for data partners or is that for users?
We reach out to both groups. So it could be end users who are especially working with LiDAR from the state that's been acquired under the LiDAR inventory. Typically, when we develop our tutorials, we take QL1 and QL2 LiDAR data from the state to develop our exercises.
Well, I was going to mention, in addition to what Rob had stated, we currently have the line item for an MSDI partner training program, and we'll be working on a needs assessment and then, putting into place some sort of training, which includes training potential grantees on grant writing, and then, using partners using specific data models. And so there is a possibility to also coordinate there if it is for partners.
That would be great.
Aaron, that makes me think that I wonder if, through participation in the Elevation Working Group, we could fund a training, part of the training workshops that way for partners, maybe through like a 0.5% overhead charge or something like that.
Yeah, this will be new, so I look forward to kind of exploring our options. But I would say that we definitely have room for coordination with the theme leads, including Jessica with land cover, and kind of training our partners in, we'll do the needs assessment and see what training is really needed. And as outlined in the previous council meeting, it could be, basic GIS support or specific, employing certain data models, or similar things that Jessica has lined out here for their partners.
Jessica, could you speak to any other funds that these MLI funds could potentially leverage for some of these priorities? Are there any additional funds?
Jessica, you're on mute.
Yikes. Yes, we've been working with the NRCS, and that has provided funds that will end September 2022. We are approaching the end of resources there, and this is the difference I feel like we need to wrap up and produce deliverables for these components and initiatives that we've started. The outreach pieces here definitely have in mind reaching out and continuing to reach out to partners and to see if we can help develop competitive proposals from external funding sources.
Thanks for that, Jessica. Any other questions or feedback from the council? So I want to suggest that we stick with that $20,000 line item that's in the proposed land plan budget and request that Jessica prioritize the work group meetings, the automating of the annual updates, and the participatory GIS survey forms. Does this seem reasonable, Jessica and council?
I think it
Yes.
does, Jenny.
I think so.
Yes.
And just so the council's aware, we have an agreement that we work through with the university system and Jessica at the O'Connor Center to spell out these kinds of details. So let's go back then to the land plan. Is there any further questions, comments, or discussion about the update to the 22 land plan? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the update to the 22 land plan, and a reminder then that your recommendation goes to the State Library Commission at their June 9th commission meeting? Is there a motion to approve the update to the 22 land plan?
Go ahead, Eric.
Move to approve the land plan.
I'll second.
Eric and Lee, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Let me also ask if there's any public comment. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and have an update on the strategic planning process, and then we'll take a short break before we hear from Chris.
Okay. So I am going, Michelle, you have a few slides, right?
Yes, I do. Can you make me the presenter?
Yeah, just 1 second. Okay. Okay, So we have Michelle and Eric on the line with us from AppGeo, and we are in the midst of the strategic planning process. By now, you have probably received the initial data gathering survey from me, hopefully at least 3 times, with all the different groups that we have reached out to and hit. And so we highly recommend that you forward it on to folks in your agencies or your groups. And the more people we have taking that survey, the better for us. And then we will be working on future interviews and workshops, but I don't want to steal all of what Michelle wants to say. So I just realized I might be taking away your presentation thunder. So go ahead, Michelle.
Well, we can do slide karaoke. That's always
Yeah.
fun. Thanks, Erin. So yeah, I'm Michelle, and also on the line is Eric, and we're working with the team on the strategic planning project. And so far it's been great, and we're looking forward to keeping it going. Up front, it's a bit of a work, you know, for everybody involved, including the Montana Library team. As Erin, I'm sure, can attest, there's quite a bit of upfront work and coordination to do during our beginning kind of information gathering period. And then it kind of levels off with lots of just like, you know, document reviews and things like that. I'll talk more about how all that works now. So this is, I'm gonna hide these video thingies so they're not blocking my screen. Okay, there we go. So this, just to give you an idea, this is the overall plan for the work that we'll be doing through this project, to give you a sense of what work will be happening and when, because it does involve many of you on this call. And so I'll explain more about these different work products in the following slides, but just in general, you know, we're here in the June, July timeframe. So as Erin mentioned, the survey's gone out. Next up, after the survey, will be some interviews and workshops. And then in August, we'll be taking all the information that we've gathered and assessed and sharing some preliminary findings like high-level goals and recommendations. We'll be formulating an outline for the strategic plan. And then September timeframe, we're looking at drafting the strategic plan and finalizing it. And then in the October, November timeframe, that's when we move forward from the strategic plan into the business plan. And we develop an outline for the business plan. We draft the business plan and finalize the business plan. So that's the schedule as it is right now. And that, of course, assumes that we can move things along as my idealized world in my linear Gantt chart implies. And we all know that things come up. So we'll keep an eye on that. Just a little refresher about strategic plans and business plans and what they are. So at very high level, the strategic plan really talks about the why. It's both a vision and a general description of how to reach the goals, whereas the business plan might describe achieving the goal in more detail. So you know, in the strategic plan, you're saying like, where are we today? Where do we want to be in 5 years? We define the vision, the goals. Generally, how do you get there to reach each goal? Whereas the business plan is those details, the means and methods, the budget, how do you measure progress? What's the timeline? It really is actionable tactics for achieving a goal in the strategic plan. So just to clarify that last point I made, strategic plan has many goals and recommendations. Business plan is you pick one of those goals that come out of the strategic plan and you write a business plan about that one goal and how you're going to achieve that one goal. So in this project, we'll also be providing a business plan template so you can move forward with some of the other goals identified in the strategic plan and define business plans for those additional goals that get prioritized. So the process of strategic planning is very inclusive. So kind of see these red arrows here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's kind of how you work through this diagram. So 1, we're getting started planning, strategizing, authoring, and through all of this, we are cycling with stakeholders involved in the strategic planning process. So there's lots of communication going, lots of feedback back and forth, status meetings, and lots of chit-chatting and asking questions, and all of that information gathering that's happening, the stakeholder surveys, interviews, and workshops. So then we get to over here in number 3, we've developed a strategic plan document, and when we get here, the question is the document going to be approved or not? Well, it would be really disappointing if, it's not approved by this point, because throughout the whole process to get here, we've had lots of touch points, meaning some of you on this call will have seen the information, will have met with you multiple times. So by the time we get to the document and whether it's going to be approved or not, there shouldn't be any surprises, and it should be approved at that point. And if it's not, it's because there wasn't enough participation kind of during that process leading up to it. So then throughout that process, at item number 4, monitoring and marketing, we really need to, market the plan as you're going along, so that, the plan will come together and people don't go off doing their own thing, not knowing that there's a plan for it. And, the point of the plan is to really focus the energy for GIS, geospatial in the state in particular directions. And so that marketing is really important to get people engaged and aware and buy-in. So once we get past here, then we move into the business planning process. So just quickly, you all know about the survey that went out this morning as of 9:13 a.m. your time. There were 53 responses. So that's up quite a bit from yesterday when I was chatting with Erin. I think we were at like 36. So you may have sent out another reminder, and if so, it worked. So thank you. So we will be summarizing the information we gather from the survey using the SWOT method, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Also, after the survey is done, we'll be conducting interviews. So in the interviews, we'll be exploring, what needs are met or unmet by the MSL. And we'll be following up on some of the survey responses in more detail with specific groups of people. We're just gathering everyone's opinions and concerns and discussing any ideas that they have for any strategic goals. So again, we'll be summarizing those findings through SWOT as well. And similarly with the stakeholder workshops, the stakeholder workshop, we will be introducing stakeholders to the process. By now, they'll have seen the survey, and some of them will have participated in interviews. And so we'll take information that we've gained from those steps in the process as well, and share some of that at the workshops, and we'll confirm vision with the the participants at the workshop, and they'll help with the prioritizing strategic goals. The workshops would engage also the non-technical users and finding out, how could they benefit and engage from MSL resources. And again, we will be summarizing information that we gather from the workshops through SWOT as well. So so this is the SWOT. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the SWOT analysis technique, but essentially we break down all the information that we've gathered through all those different information gathering activities into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this basically the SWOT really helps us to organize all of that information. And from there, that's where we are able to see patterns and pull out kind of high-level goals and recommendations to go with those goals, and group things together in a logical way. It's a very useful tool for analyzing lots of data like that. So just on the deliverables and review cycles. So throughout the project, there are various deliverables. This is a list of the main deliverables that we'll be providing. And for each of these main deliverables, we pretty much go through the same process. So we develop the content, then we meet with the team to share that and discuss it and review it. And then Montana, so you folks have the opportunity to review it on your own and provide additional feedback, outside of that meeting. And then we make revisions to the deliverable based on your feedback, and then we finalize the deliverable. So that cycle kind of happens for each of those main deliverables. And that's why at the beginning, I wanted to show you that, I'll go back to it, that schedule, because each of those deliverables, it requires a review cycle and engagement from the group. So I think that is it. Yep, that's it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Questions for Michelle? All right. Like Aaron and Michelle said, we really look forward to continuing to engage with all of you as well as our stakeholders on this strategic planning process. The more feedback that we can gather through this process, the stronger the plan's going to be. So thanks for your involvement and encouraging others to be involved as well. Is there any further discussion about the strategic planning process? All right, let's go ahead and take a short break and plan to come back at, let's shoot for 11:35, and then we'll have our conversation with Chris. Have from DPHHS with us. Chris is certainly no stranger to the council, so we're really glad to have you back with us, Chris.
Yay, it's great to be here. Thank you.
I'm going to turn things over to you.
Okay. I talked to Aaron actually a few months ago about talking to you all. I just started working, I think I said when I introduced myself this morning, I just started working at DPHHS about a year ago. And so I've been really interested in governance. So it was great to hear about your strategic plan and hoping we can steal some of that. But I had been interested in applying for an MLIA grant, and another person at DPHHS had also been interested in a completely different division, but the GIS team's pretty good about talking to one another. And I should mention what I'm going to talk to you about today, I've discussed with a small team of our GIS folks, Anna Bradley, Jesse Fernandez, Will Gardner, Miriam Naaman Sessions, Brian Norderud, and Chris Santucci all kind of had input into this. And so I just wanted to talk to you about it and get your thoughts and feedback. And so we had been interested in applying for MLIA grants, but when we started listening in on the discussions and doing our research on it, we realized that because health is not an MSDI layer, we wouldn't be considered under a tier 1 application. Or that's my impression. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that was our impression. And so we were hesitant to go to a great amount of work when we wouldn't be one of the first entities considered for funding. And so that just started snowballing in my head. the Montana spatial data infrastructure was originally based on the national spatial data infrastructure, which NSDI hasn't even been updated since 2008. I think now most people look at the National Geospatial Data Asset, NGDA, at the NGDA themes, but no matter where you look, health is not listed. And I thought, boy, during COVID, it's like prime time, right? To like get that listed now. And it made me really look at what Montana's done. Like Aaron was talking earlier this morning about nobody's really done anything with cadastral like we have. And Montana set the trend in so many different ways. Like we were one of the first states in the nation to have a GIS clearinghouse. We were the first place in the nation to have GIS in libraries program that then became a national program. And I think that when it's a large state like this with a relatively low population, it's maybe easier for us to take risks than other places. And plus we all know each other, right? We're all neighbors and friends. And so I think it's easier for us in many ways to get things done than if there were a lot more people involved and perhaps more contentious discussions. And so I'm hoping that Montana can set the trend. And I would love to get health listed as an MSDI theme, but then I think if we could push that up to you know, through NSGIC, through whatever national organizations anyone is involved with, if we could push that up so that NGDA is listing health as a theme, I think it would certainly help me. It would help us in so many ways. You know, GIS hasn't been embraced that much in health departments. When I started the very first day of the government shutdown, and so I like came into work and they're like, here's a laptop, go home. And so what I did, because I didn't have the hardware or the software I needed to do GIS yet, and IT wasn't really interested in helping one individual as opposed to 3,000 people in the department. What I did was I started calling health departments all over the United States and saying, hey, do you have any governance documents? How does GIS fit into your organization? How does this work? And the bottom line was, it's not really working that great in most health departments. And I think the reason for that is that historically everything's been very siloed. And people are very concerned, of course, with HIPAA information, PII, PHI. They're just very concerned about revealing personal data. And so I think now coronavirus has kind of opened that door for us. And I think that by getting health listed as a theme, it would help GIS take off within health departments. And certainly that's the case in Montana. I think it will help give the GIS group the recognition that it needs to really push those governance documents up the chain. And I was really, really happy to sit in on your strategic planning conversations, because it's like, wow, when you finish that, we'll just like steal it and start melding it into, you know, the public health governance documents. So it's great to see that that's happening now, and great to hear that conversation. So I noticed Jesse Fernandez hopped on the line. Jesse, do you have anything to add to what I said?
No, I don't have anything to add. I think that was a great summary. It would be nice to keep bringing health to the GIS forefront, because there's a lot that can be done. I just keep thinking about Esri's health and GIS conference from a couple months ago, and it was so great. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So.
What about from the council? What are your thoughts? Oh, I see Brian's on the call as well. Brian, do you have anything to add before we open it up to everyone else?
I guess I would just jump in real quick and say, I think you clearly kind of laid out a good overview there, and it was well said. And I think, yeah, you know, I kind of would, you know, I just want to get kind of health data kind of elevated out there and more, you know, kind of bring attention to it in additional ways. So I think that's all I guess I would add there.
So I would love to hear the council's thoughts on that. What do you think of health becoming an MSDI theme, and what do you think about pushing it up nationally if we adopt it locally? What are your thoughts?
This is Dan Staley. I'll kind of go first, just kind of sharing my thoughts. One is, you know, I'm a GIS geek, so of course it excites me right away hearing about the more data, the better, especially useful and meaningful data like you're talking about with the health department. But the other side of me is, you know, I guess the more formal thought is that we're the land information, you know, we're Montana Land Information Council. And so I'm thinking about health and you know, the health of land and our land plan. And then I'm having trouble kind of consolidating physical health to, you know, what we're advising as a council, which would be land information. You know, the first thought I have is you know, water and wastewater, you know, totally in the realm of land information, but I'm having trouble making the connection with the rest of the health, which is something you kind of alluded to initially about it not, you know, being a tier one, you know, identified as a tier one priority within the grant program. So those are just my initial thoughts of support. I like the idea, but there's probably some hurdles to get over as far as the scope of what we're doing.
Right. And I think that we might want to weigh things out. Like, certainly the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure doesn't have the same restrictions that MLIAC may have. But and you, I think you even brought up, like, you know, we've worked with Fish, Wildlife and Parks, and I think is it DNRC? We've cooperated with a couple of groups to look at algal blooms and things like that. So some health data absolutely can be tied to the land, and maybe that just has to be more well defined. I don't know. Other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, that would be a fair assessment. Just kind of identifying what specific you know, health we're going from kind of the 50,000 foot view of specifically what themes you're after to a little more specific.
Right. I think my opinion is that the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure, or, you know, the national listing of themes, I would like to just see generic health included, but for the land information plan, it makes sense to define it a little bit more.
So I'd like to thank you, Chris, for bringing this to our attention, and also Dan. I think you, by going first and suggesting that there is a little bit of a challenge for a land-based committee to weigh in on a socially based topic. I think that's a good point. But, you know, we could think about things like 911. That is not necessarily a land-based component. but I was wondering, what if we could use health as a gauge of how the MSDI is doing? You know, in other words, how are the layers that are being produced sufficient to support a health-based infrastructure? You know, like a dashboard. Okay, transportation is in place. You know, water is in place, sewage is in place, 911 is in place. Okay, we're in good shape to support healthcare measures. You know, does that how does that sound as a, you know, as a step towards getting there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just an idea. I was just dealing with like this a health savings account, and there was a little dashboard, and it said, you know, you're 68% there. You know, update your profile and update this, and you know, could we use health as a metric like that? So, anyway, those are my 2 cents.
I'd like to chime in. When I hear about this, Chris, I'm really interested, and it's an area of data that I admittedly don't have a lot of experience with. I don't know much about, and I see it that the breadth, the potential breadth for the data and the things that you do is so broad. I mean, it's so vast, much more so than I think a lot of any of the existing MSDI layers, right? We have things like transportation and structures. There's very definitive data sets and data structures for those, a lot of standards. And that latter, one of the things I see about an MSDI data set is that we've implemented a level of standards and almost a ladder, as an analogy, where that data works up from the community level up to the state, you know, and up and down, I guess, both. And so I guess my question back to you is, if we want to start this discussion, is what are the data sets? Where's the framework? And, you know, maybe there's one or two, or maybe there's a whole breadth and it's a whole concept, and we have to think about it and approach it differently than some of the MSDI data sets. But really, what are those data sets that we need to standardize vertically, right? And that would apply themselves in the similar manner as some of the other MSDI data sets that we've dealt with over time.
Right. And you are right. I mean, it spans probably much larger than I even understand right now. You know, I work in the in child and maternal health. And so like right this very second, I'm looking at where there's gaps in food security and all over the state, where are we not, you know, with kids, especially telecommuting to school, you know, they're not getting those meals that they usually get, and how do we reach those populations? And so I'm always dealing with stuff like that, right? Today I'm dealing with like childcare provider gaps, and some counties don't even have any licensed childcare providers, but Brian and Jesse are working on completely different things, you know, like tobacco cessation, or I mentioned the algal blooms already, which is actually Will Gardner is doing more of that kind of work, but it is all over the map. And I think the way, and there is a real need for working up and down the ladder. We've especially, I think, since coronavirus, everyone has made a huge effort to try to reach out to the tribes and to work with the tribes. That's some of the the people that we're most concerned about live on tribal lands. And so the way that we can help and work up and down that ladder is setting up those kinds of standards that you're talking about. Like, I think because maybe health is like more of a social science, right? When I was asking people for data, you know, they're like sending me an email. Well, there's this place in Great Falls, and then there's this other place in Hardin. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll, you know, I'll fix that for you. But so I think internally we've started developing standards, and Brian has done a lot to say, hey, here's what's out there, please use this. And we do use a lot of MSDI layers as base layers, and try to educate people about data standards and developing them. So that's another, it would be great to get that out there, you know, to help local governments, county governments, tribal governments, other people have a consistent format. Yeah. Brian or Jesse, do you have anything to add? I probably touched on about 1/10 of the stuff we work on.
Yeah, I would, you know, the more you talk, the deeper you could go, I guess. I think, yeah, you know, would probably have to start kind of small on what something would be useful for everyone. But I think of things that, you know, even we're trying to keep up to date and standard, you know, that people always are asking for locations of pharmacies and like, you know, we have a big survey of tobacco retailers and alcohol retailers and things. So, you know, even just some of those structures, I guess, that can be place-based, and that then we can use for things like Chris is talking about, you know, access, you know, to childcare, pharmacy, food, you know, healthy foods and such. But definitely need it standardized. Yeah.
Erin, were you trying to raise your hand?
Yeah, I have my hand. So a couple things. So based on what you're saying is, you know, while you're talking to the council and explaining what you need in health, here are the layers that I'm hearing. I'm hearing addresses, I'm hearing structures, I'm hearing possibly transportation, and I'm also hearing boundaries. And so I would just remind everyone that the MSDI is modeled off of the NSDI, which provides that national framework to build upon. And so, you know, I would, I guess I would also reiterate what Lee said. What are the data layers you are specifically looking for? And then also remind everyone that all the information that is collected under the MLA has to be made publicly available. That's in statute. So if it is, you know, if we're teetering on health data, you know, is health data more operational and MSDI is the foundation? And so I would think about it like that. But the way that you could advance the use of MSDI in the health and public health and human services is to integrate these data sets within your operations and your workflows. We had, I don't know, several years back, prior to you being hired and having a GIS analyst in place, because just to remind everyone, HHS went from having 0 GIS analysts to 2 in the past few years, which is really great, showing the growth potential there. We had someone from Medicaid come over and ask, they wanted to do a simple analysis of folks inside of a reservation and outside of a reservation. So a simple query using MSDI, boundaries and addresses, to basically, you know, flag, are you in or are you out, so that they could apply services and benefits to folks existing or living on a reservation. And so that's just one simple way. And I think we don't want to forget the simple ways that we can integrate integrate MSDI. And addressing, I would say, being probably one of the bigger ones is probably looking at the MSDI addressing layer, perhaps adopting it for the agency as some sort of standard to utilize, and then integrating it into your queries. I mean, you could integrate MSDI without anybody ever knowing that they're using GIS just by using the geocoding service on the back end. Another point of clarification I did want to make was the NSDI is kind of, it's not, they're kind of starting to look at it in a different way, but it is still in place. And there is a strategic plan for 21 through 2024. And with the adoption of the National Geospatial Data Act, they're starting to kind of broaden their management plan of geospatial data sets, but they still have the framework themes. So there still are committees in place working on advancing those themes. So I just wanted to make a point of clarification there that the FGDC is still actively pushing the NSDI and greater workflows and other informational data sets, and to the point where they're working on a national or international level to create a global spatial data infrastructure. So it's really starting to expand more. And there's lots of ways I think that health can start to standardize data sets for mapping purposes. And I'd be willing to help advocate for the Department of Health and just advancing GIS throughout the department. And I would invite Department of Health to join NSGIC and partner with me to bring these initiatives to the table. But I will say that during the pandemic, my colleagues, the GIS coordinators and the geographic information officers, when we were discussing health, we were discussing technology, whether that's flagging a person when they come in and out of a zone, which some states were doing to basically see where people were traveling. That might be a little too scary for people, but that was happening in other states to see if they were traveling in and out of major affected areas. The other thing is working with geospatial vendors to allow that type of technology. It was making sure that that the foundational data sets were available and working with the departments of health to get these resources stood up as quickly as possible, including using addresses to map vaccine locations, using addresses to map locations where you could get tested for COVID. And so I think that there is room for development and integration of MSDI into DPHHS activities. Another thing we haven't really talked about yet is the Next Gen 911 initiative. It may be initiative, but it's using so many MSDI layers. One of those being, I think, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, hospital districts. And so that could be a layer that that we could work with the Department of Health to collect that geospatial layer that's needed for some of the work that we do with NextGen. And then also, we partnered with, when we were responding to the pandemic, we were partnering with the Montana Hospital Association to make sure that we did have some of those critical care facilities in our system, and we were mapping them. Basically, we were giving it to them. They were not giving it to us. And so it was one of those things where if we were missing something, we were able to improve our data as we were responding to the pandemic. So those are some of the things I think are important to keep in mind and remember regarding the MSDI.
Eric, did I see you had your hand up?
Eric Spangenberg?
Yeah, I think maybe he had it up and pulled it down.
I think, Erin, that's a lot of great and valid points, and we do use MSDI layers a lot to develop what we're doing. But part of my interest in getting health specifically listed as an MSDI layer is also bringing attention to it. you know, like food insecurity. It's a big issue in Montana, or the the county that has, if you look at the 0 to 5-year-old population, and then what percentage of that population has access to licensed childcare, the county that has the most access is only 40%. And there's half a dozen counties that have nothing. So
Do you guys need me for something?
we just wanted to know if you had something to say. We thought you saw your hand up. Did you want to comment?
He put something in the chat, so I think
Okay.
he said that we got to what he was going to say.
Okay, good, thank you. So part of my interest in getting this to be its own MSDI theme is getting people to see it and to think about it. You know, there's so many issues that, you know, unless you're in the weeds with it, you just might not even be thinking about it. But it can affect everything we do. You know, it can affect where there's going to be new roads, where, you know, it can affect all of the work that we do that is land-based.
I don't want to cut off council discussion, but I wanted to also provide some feedback. First, in case the council isn't aware, there is a workflow that the council created a number of years ago now for how the council goes about adopting a new theme. We obviously have themes that are in addition to the NSDI, themes like climate, for example. Climate was the most recent theme that was added a number of years ago. And it was largely added, as Chris points out, to raise the visibility of climate-specific data and to make use of the MSDI in elevating their work. And so were the council at some point to want to consider health-related data as a potential MSDI theme, we do have kind of a workflow process that we can go through to do the evaluation of whether or not health-related data would be an appropriate MSDI theme. Another point I wanted to make, and you see that if you look at the FY22 land plan, and it kind of gets to the points that Dan and Rob were making about the kind of more socially based topic that health represents, and also some of the policy related issues that I think we all know are related to health and other kinds of related data sets. In that Tier 1 grant priorities in the land plan, they certainly call out specific themes, but with an eye to the policy related efforts that support for those data sets are intended to support, specifically in this case, Next Generation 911 and geo-enabled elections. And so grants were prioritized that help support those kinds of socially based policy initiatives. And I think certainly short of considering health as a spatial data infrastructure, if part of our goal is to try to draw attention to the needs and opportunities, one thing for the council to consider as we're planning for our FY23 land plan is to think about some of these health related topics and whether or not they might be appropriate to call out in an updated land plan. I don't think there's anything to say that we can't and shouldn't consider those kinds of questions, and then how we can support through grant funds various data sets that would help develop data to support those policy priorities. And certainly through the strategic planning process, there's a great opportunity for us to raise attention to these kinds of specific needs. And Chris is obviously such a passionate advocate for this work. I look forward to seeing what kinds of shape that might take during these kinds of planning processes.
Well, thanks everyone for your time. It's really great to see you all and to hear your voices, and I appreciate the feedback and would love to discuss it more. If you feel more comfortable one-on-one, that'd be great. Or if you have any thoughts or ideas for Department of Health and how we best proceed, I would love to hear what you have to say. So don't hesitate to drop me a line or give me a call. I think you all have my contact information from this meeting. I'm on the invite list, so you can get it there if you don't already have it.
Chris, just a couple thoughts, be sure to be involved in the strategic planning and follow the land plan work, where we also have new appointments coming up. And so I don't know if DPHHS has ever had a seat on the council. And we have a number of state agency seats available. So a conversation to have with your agency leadership as council appointments are going to be made.
And that is happening fairly soon, right? You mentioned that.
The governor appoints the agency, which agencies have seats on the council.
And that's happening
now probably, or in the next month or so.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
One more thing I forgot to add, Jenny. And I think Jesse already dropped off. I don't see her name on here any longer. There was a push in the health community to start to adopt an addressing standard, which I caught wind of through NSGIC. And so Jesse and I had briefly chatted about that, but I think that's something that if you could coordinate with Jesse on to kind of further those efforts on behalf of the Department of Health, and then I could help represent Montana, the MSDI. I would greatly appreciate that, and we could coordinate on that.
Great.
And then Erin, one more request, maybe you could, just for the council's awareness, share out that workflow for evaluating MSDI themes and share that with Chris and Jesse as well.
Absolutely. Do you want me to just put it on today's meeting?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris, thanks so much for being with us. This was a great discussion.
Thank you all for having me. It was good.
All right. I'll move on and ask if there is any public comment. Is there any other business or announcements? Just a reminder to get your applications in for reappointment.
Jenny, I have one announcement that I totally blanked on earlier regarding the NSGIC Geo Women Initiative that I work on.
Great.
Okay, let me just share my screen really quick. So I think many of you have heard me discuss the NSGIC Geo Women Initiative that I co-chair with a counterpart from, the name of the company is just, her name is Kimberly Denny, and she's out of Huntsville, Alabama. And she represents the private sector. And basically, roughly 4.5 years ago, some women, a part of NSGIC, decided to get together and start discussing what it would look like to create an initiative based on empowering women to empowering women in GIS to take on more leadership positions. And so we've been working over the past couple of years to create a group, and we have a charter and a work plan and a place for networking. And we've created some educational opportunities, and we haven't done a ton of advocacy yet, but I wanted to kind of bring everybody into the loop. The council is all, anyone on the council is available to be a NYSGIC member. If you're not a member, please let me know and we can get you registered. Under our current membership model, it includes the entire council. And so some of the things that we've been working on, so there is a networking kind of blog community where anyone can bring up new ideas, discuss with their counterparts in other states, whether it's you as a council member, you as a local government representative, myself as a coordinator, working with other coordinators and GIOs, but I just wanted to let you know some of the activities that we have been working on. So we started a professional book club, and the current book we're reading is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Clearly, we've got a thing for Brene Brown because we already did one called Daring to Lead. And basically, we have a couple meetings and discuss what we've learned and how we can implement that in our day-to-day work. So here's the upcoming meetings. You don't have to attend the first one if you can't and you want to attend the second, and vice versa. So I'd highly encourage you, if you're interested, to join us in those discussions. And then some of the recent learning activities that we've done based on national surveys on what women would like to see in regards to leading, in regards to learning more about leadership and geospatial activities is the first one was maintain connections in changing times, kind of based on the pandemic and basically in personal branding. So how to sell yourself. And then second of all, the most recent one in May of this year was building your elevator pitch. We had a woman, Deirdre, I think it's Brown, I'm spacing her last name right now, from the US Census Bureau, give a discussion about how to build your elevator pitch to kind of have that ready and available when you are in the elevator or have the opportunity to talk to that executive level individual. And so this is open to everyone, but it is based on promoting leadership in GIS for women. So I wanted to invite you all, and I'll send more information up in a follow-up.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.
Any other business or announcements? All right. A couple of reminders. Erin will be reaching out to people about volunteering for the FY23 land plan process. Please complete the strategic planning survey and look for opportunities to continue to engage in that process. And then our next scheduled meeting is September 16th. So if I don't see you between now and then, please have a very lovely summer. And if there's no other business, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thanks, everyone.